In this episode of Escaping the Rabbit Hole, I talked to a former conspiracy theorist about her wild ride with conspiracy theories and the smoking gun that debunks the 9/11 controlled demolition crowd. Do you have any idea what the smoking gun is? Keep listening to find out.
Welcome to Escaping the Rabbit Hole, hosted by former conspiracy theorist Antonio Perez, author of Converting Conspiracy Theorists. Antonio looks at conspiracy theories from multiple angles, such as how do conspiracy theorists impact their family and friends? How can they escape the grip of conspiracy theories? And why do they fall down the rabbit hole in the first place? You'll discover strategies to set clear boundaries with people stuck in dangerous conspiracy theories and improve your mental well-being. Here's your host, Antonio Perez.
Aloha, it's Antonio with escapingtherabbithole.com. Today I have a very special guest. Like every podcast is always a very special guest, but this one is extra special. It's funny, I talked to her earlier, she called herself a truther. That's the nomenclature I used to use to describe myself, because I thought we were uncovering the truth. Stephanie, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm always happy to talk about the importance of recovery.
You're right, it is a recovery. And for me, it was a recovery where it did not happen overnight. The last remnants of conspiracy theories for me was kind of letting go. There might still have little elements of thinking 9/11 was an inside job, but it's very few elements. A few months ago, I was on the conspiracy theory Reddit, well, before they banned me like 2 weeks ago. Free speech, conspiracy theory Reddit, yay, free speech until you debunk their conspiracy theories. In the there was a thread they were talking about. Somebody's trying to show some evidence. It was a video of George Bush talking where the video was edited. So I started getting like panic attacks. So I'm like, you know what? Before I go down this rabbit hole, let me go Google this. Let me do my own research. It was a heavily edited video. At that point, I'm like, yeah, this is bullshit.
Yep, they always do that.
Yeah, let me ask you, what was your first foray into conspiracy theories? What's the thing that got its tentacle in you?
It was really all my life. I mean, I those Time Life Mysteries of the Unknown and like the Reader's Digest compilations, like I grew up like most kids are reading, See Spot Run and all that shit, and I'm reading Mysteries of the Unknown, and I'm reading books about archaeology and ancient Egypt, and so it was always there. There's a predilection. There's always something, but I was in and out of it like all my life, and dabbled in David Icke and stuff like that, but I was able to enjoy it without totally believing it. But then in like 2013 or 2014, I saw that stupid Zeitgeist movie, and I remember at the time I felt this whoosh inside me, and I was like, this feels good. I want more of this. Like, that was the dopamine.
Yep.
And then I decided, even though I had David Icke's 9/11 book years before, and like I said, I was in and out of it, that's when I went like hardcore. And when I started running out of 9/11 stuff, I started looking for other stuff. And I remember one time I was like,
you gotta tap that dopamine.
Yeah. And at one point I was like, no, Nazis in Antarctica. No, I'll pass on this.
That reminds me. I think Mick West talks about. Somebody has told me about this. He talks about the line of demarcation. There's a line between what people believe and don't believe. When we used to run a conspiracy theory movie Bruin View every Sunday in a bar I worked at in Detroit. And when people would ask me, what do you think about the lizard people? I'm like, I'm not that crazy. I'm not that crazy. I use it as my barometer. I'm like, I'm just this crazy. I believe in satanic pedophiles that are trafficking kids. It's all crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, Mick West is right though. There's always a line in the sand. Like back when I was a truther, someone on Facebook was like, they sent me a post about flat earth, and I replied with, sorry bro, not my thing. Like, like moon landing shit and flat earth, forget it.
What? You did not fall into the new age?
No, I dabbled with the occult and the new age and
Okay.
stuff like that too, but it just, I don't know. It was such a weird mix of different things. And I'm still trying to figure out, like, why was I like watching Credo Mutwa and David Icke videos back in like 2003, 2004. And, but yet, like, I was able to kind of leave that behind and still live like a normal life.
Did
And the only thing I can think is it stopped being fun.
it was painful. Like, oh, this is not good. Did you ever? Who was that black guy? I think it's from Africa that David Icke was talking about. The one that
Credo Mutwa. Yeah,
the
that's
one
Credo
that
Mutwa.
he's the one that could summon the UFOs, right?
Well, he's I think he's deceased now, but he was like an AIDS denialist, and he was like big on the Sirius conspiracy, where like, why is it that this one tribe in Africa could see the star constellation that no one else could see or something? And you know, he was like this cool shaman guy, but because of his AIDS denialism, thousands of people died.
I don't know. I don't think I ever fell into AIDS denialism. There's a lot of stuff I didn't fall,
No.
but it's funny in retrospect. I'm wondering if I actually believe the stuff or it gave us community. I don't know about you, but hey, I found other people that validated my ideas. I loved that. It does that resonate with you at all?
I didn't, when I was like hardcore into conspiracy theories, I really didn't have friends. And in a way, I think that was a saving grace for me, because that made it easier for me to leave it behind.
Okay.
But it was there. I miss like the 90s and the early 2000s. I call it like the golden age of Coast to Coast, like when Art Bell was still doing it. Like, he pushed back. There was fun. And one of my friends said something like really meaningful. He was like, there was kind of a nod and wink back in that era of all the believers that we might believe, but kind of having fun. And the conspiracy movement changed so badly after, especially after 9/11. But it was just, there used to be fun there. It used to be so much fun. And that's why that was the original reason behind starting Doubt. Was it was me and Jatarth and Brent talking about the good old days, like, yeah, we had some fun, you know.
I definitely it had some elements of fun, but then I realized it was pushing some dangerous ideas. Um, Speaking of like kind of like the wink wink nudge nudge, have you ever read? I have not read this book. I'm pretty sure it's on my shelf or I have it on Kindle. Robert Anton Wilson's Luminatus trilogy.
I have one of the books. I have like an old like 1970s copy of one of the books.
It From what I gather, it sounds like he kind of poked fun of conspiracy theories.
It was a LARP. It was a LARP that
You say lark or LARP? LARP?
LARP, LARP. Yeah, it was just like an ARG LARP that they were doing, and it was a joke. It was a joke. It started out in the pages of Playboy magazine, and too many people took it serious. And I mean, yeah, jokes are fun, but
Subscribe to the podcast by going to www.escapingtherabbithole.com. Add your first name and best email to the form and smash the button that says Get the Podcast. You'll get instant access when the newest episodes are released. Plus, you'll get the first 3 chapters of Antonio's newest book sent directly to your email.
What was your perspective on mental health growing up versus now?
it seemed to me, with the the misdiagnosis of borderline personality disorder, and I guess bipolar disorder was accurate. I was just always inundated with depression and bad thoughts, and just I wasn't as self-aware, I guess, is the quick and easy answer. And I was like on so much medication like about 10 years ago, and now um I can manage everything without medication. And I still talk to a therapist occasionally, but I just the mental health improved so much, and it didn't really start improving until that moment when I was leaving the conspiracy theories behind. But it still took a few years after that to get to a better
So
place.
you had mental health issues before conspiracy theories.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that the majority of people who are attracted to conspiracy theories, there is, and it's usually, if you dig deep enough, you're going to find traumatic events.
Rauma. Yep. Yep.
You're gonna find that trauma, and you're usually gonna find a history of drugs. You're gonna find a history of toxic, abusive relationships.
Narcissism.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna throw this out at you. Tell me if this kind of resonates with you. This explains. I think it helps explain conspiracy theorists. What kind of pulls them in, and it's in shameless plug in my book, Converting Conspiracy Theorists. I think it's in chapter 2 or 3. I talk about something called the FAME model. FAME. The F stands for feeling powerless and insignificant. Often conspiracy theorists, they feel powerless, insignificant. They want to feel unique. They want that kind of power. It's like a feeling of lack. They're not feeling something they want. At the same time, conspiracy theorists, they feel like a victim, but they want to be a hero at the same time. Does that resonate with you at all?
Precisely, exactly, 100%. That's exactly it.
A stands for apophenia. That's the idea of apophenia is when you're connecting the dots. And
Yep.
I think what happens is I think it's almost like you're connecting the dots, you're creating a story, and then there's like a big meta story that covers everything. Like QAnon is a big meta story. It's QAnon. M is misinformation. We know it's freaking everywhere. And then E, I think one of the biggest ones is external locus of control. Are you familiar with the locus of control?
Very much so. In fact, that was one of my epiphanies coming out of the rabbit hole when I watched a 7-part documentary debunking 9/11 on YouTube. And the last part, they talked about like, what is the mind of a conspiracy theorist like? And they use the example of your alarm goes off and you hit snooze. So you're running late for work, and on your commute, you're yelling about the slow driver in front of you, but you should be taking the responsibility on yourself. Yeah, that slow driver is a jerk, but it's your fault for hitting snooze. And they mention the external locus of control. And I tell people this, I remember it like it was yesterday. I looked up, I was watching it on my phone. I was all alone in the house, and I looked up and I just said to no one, to an empty house, that's me. I'm not gonna be like this anymore. Like I had that like revelation, and that is it's one of the things that conspiracy theorists lack, is they feel so out of control. Nothing is in their control. They want to control things, but there's that like Fight Club thing where it's like, stop trying to control everything and just let go. And I could never do that.
When I was first introduced to conspiracy theorists, it was maybe 6 months after 9/11, 6 months, something like that, closer to a year. I was at a bar in Detroit, so old like kind of redneck bar or whatever, and I had been kind of going out with this girl at the time. It kind of went through, so I went to the bar to drink, which is natural. You should totally do that when you're depressed. Go and drink; it helps. Bad idea. I sitting next to this white guy. He had I think it was like a jean jacket or denim jacket. He had a pocket Constitution. Here's a important caveat: if you see anybody with a pocket Constitution, turn around, run the other way. Nothing good is going to come up of it. he asked me if I knew who Alex. I think we we're talking about 9/11. He asked me, he's like, "Do you know who Alex Jones is?" When I told him no, he just basically told me everything about New World Order and these shadow governments are controlling the world. And that right there, it clicked my confirmation bias. I'm like, oh, I'm not I'm not depressed because of anything I'm doing or not doing. It's the outside world. That's it helped me to realize that why I was miserable was the outside world. At the same time, I'm like, okay, the outside world is making me miserable. I need to. This is when I was listening to Alex Jones. I'm like, I need to fight back. I need to inform people. It's a freaking pyramid scheme. You pull other people into it, and it's also the sunk cost fallacy. You don't want to feel like you were duped, so you bring other people into it, and then I don't know if you felt like this. I felt guilt, a little bit of guilt for pulling my brothers into it, and I thank God they didn't get full into it. But I thought like, holy shit, I pulled my loved ones into this crazy conspiracy cuckoo land.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've wondered that myself. Like, I didn't post too much about that kind of stuff really on Facebook or anything, but I wonder how many people did I pill, or how many people did I encourage or inspire in some dark, horrible way? And it just didn't, it doesn't sit right with me. Like, I need to know that unknowable. Like, did I pill anyone? And if I did, how can I unpill them?
There's an orange book by Peter Bagasse. You know what I'm talking about, right?
No,
Oh my God, have you ever heard of How to Have Impossible Conversations?
no.
Holy shit! You got to get this book, How to Have Impossible Conversations. Um, he definitely leans right, but he's respectful in his conversations. Have you heard of street epistemology?
Yeah, I've heard of that. I couldn't define it, but I've heard
He's
of
the
it.
one
It's
that
familiar.
he's the one that coined the term. One of the questions I love from chapter 4 or 5, whatever, is you can ask somebody, how confident are you in the belief that 9/11 was an inside, and how confident are you on a scale of 1 to 10 that 9/11 was an inside job? You get the baseline. If let's say if they're like, oh, like a 7, then you ask them like, why didn't you choose a lower number? And then they have to like introduce doubt. In the book, they say if they choose a really high number, it's a good chance it's a moralistic belief, meaning they have absolutely no evidence for it. It's just they just believe moralistic. And then I think a follow-up question you can ask them, if it sounds like it might be a moralistic belief, you can ask them, would somebody believing X make them a good or a bad person? And if it's a moralistic belief, good luck changing with evidence. You have to use other, in the book they have some other texts, but yeah, anybody listening to this, go get a copy of How to Have Impossible Conversations. It's phenomenal questions to be able to pull people out. Other thing he mentions, he talks about the unread library effect, which is, you're familiar with Dunning-Kruger, right?
Yeah. The
You think we're
is
smarter
that
than we are.
yeah.
He in the book they talk about the unread library effect, meaning like this is a good example. All these books up here, and the fact they have all these books up there, it tricks people into thinking they know more about a subject, or because they know somebody, they know more about a subject. Unread library effect, I think, basically states that when we have access to knowledge, we think we know more about that subject. So if we're grabbing all these documentaries, et cetera, the book talks. There's a couple of ways to help people overcome that. But yeah, definitely check that out. What emotional payoff did you get from researching conspiracy theories?
Um, it was the brain heroin, the dopamine, and I, was kind of like researching something about, like, I was researching about the borderline personality disorder and all that, and I even went to a special therapist for it. And this therapist, another therapist, and then a third therapist and a psychiatrist were like, no, you don't have it, you're too self-aware. And one of the things that I kind of fell upon that I thought might be a diagnosis was lack of dopamine. That I never seemed to be able to have that dopamine, and that might have been true. I might have a dopamine deficiency, and that is a real thing. However, those conspiracy theories were kind of like a hit of ecstasy, where they ran that dopamine into overdrive, and it would leave you with this. I don't know if anyone's ever had an ecstasy hangover. They are not fun. They are not fun.
What do they call it? Manic Mondays? What suicidal
Tuesdays. Yeah, I never got that deep depression, but I just felt terrible, and I'm like, why do people do this?
Yeah.
And
then
but
you do it again, you're like, this is amazing. And then why do they do this?
yeah. And I felt powerless and useless and hopeless in life, and I was never going to do anything, and I always wanted to be better. And I grew up kind of with this like entitlement, where my mom was like, you're going to be a famous author someday, and like hyping me up, and I just had this entitlement, and I don't think
something.
Yeah, and I kept thinking, oh, I'm going to be famous, or I'm going to be this, or I'm going to be that, and I just was never happy. Nothing was ever enough.
Well,
The emotional payoff for me was just feeling special and important and smart.
That makes sense. I use this process called core transformation. It's phenomenal for change work, and it's similar to something called IFS, internal family systems. If anybody here wants to do any kind of self work, you can get the book Core Transformation. It might be a little bit easier to use than IFS, but it's this idea where you kind of close your eyes, you scan your body, you think about maybe some behavior, thought that you're struggling with and you want to change. Close your eyes, you imagine you're in that context, you're going to do it, and then you just kind of get a sensation, or do a body scan, notice, and you act like that is a part of you, like an inner personality, like it's an inner part of you. And then you thank that part for being there, but thank you for being here, welcome it, instead of normally we try to like get rid of if you have like a bad emotion, we try to get rid of it. But what you do is you kind of befriend it, act like it's an inner child, and ask it like, what do you want? What are you doing for me? There's more of the process, but there's a couple different, we can talk offline if you want to do a session and give you an example of it. There's ways to take those parts of us and help them to get what they want. For example, with core transformation, you ask the part like what it wants. Let's say it says, I want you to feel special. Then you have that part imagine it's stepping into what it would be like to have that already. And you ask it, okay, let's say it says it wants to feel special, and then you ask it, and you keep chunking higher and higher until it gets to a place of like oneness, beingness, peace. For me, they feel very psychedelic. There's a lot more of the process. But what happens is those are feelings that generate from the inside versus a feeling of wanting to feel smart. That's like it's like the external validation. The process helps you to generate the feelings from the inside of feeling of like oneness, beingness, peace. And when you come from that angle, it's so much easier to let go of bad habits and to get the emotional payoff that conspiracy theories were doing originally, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get that. And, I've told people that, you might flip a light switch. Like with me, when my friend said that they worked with a Sandy Hook parent, a light switch flipped in my head, and I was like, this has to end. I can't believe any of this anymore. This has to end. And then the real work started after they left from visit, and I looked up that YouTube series. But then that, and I was like, okay, that's it, I'm done. And I couldn't expose myself to any information about 9/11, whether I that was dead, like that old me was dead, and I was ready to let it lie until COVID hit. And then I saw hundreds of people, some of them I knew in real life, on Facebook losing their minds. And I was faced with this idea of everyone sounds like I used to, and they need to know how bad that is, how wrong and terrible that is, and what path they're headed down. No one would listen to me. And, so I was willing to let that part of me just be dead. But then I was like, this is something I can talk about, but no one wanted to listen.
When I think it was February or I think it was March, the beginning of the pandemic, I had started using that core transformation process again, I just told you about, and I got an email from, and I hadn't used Facebook for 2 months because I'm like, okay, I think it was already, I was already dealing with like a lot of toxic stuff, so I stopped using it for 2 months. I used core transformation to cut out Facebook for 2 months. And then I got an email from my friend whose family invented that process. They sent out an email saying, hey, we're going to have some practice groups. If you want to find a practice partner, here's a link to our Facebook group. Come by. And part of me is like, oh God, I don't know if I should do this. I'm like, let me just, I tried real lightly. I'm like, let me just click the link. Oh, as soon as I clicked that link to open Facebook, holy shit, I was smacked into, I started using Facebook during, like when the pandemic was ramping up. That's when like Q&A, it was wild. Like, anxiety and panic attacks instantly. God, I'm almost stuttering here. Yeah, that was the worst time to go back onto Facebook.
Yeah. I used to get that with every day when I'd log into Facebook, I'd have someone that I knew in real life either posting conspiracy theories, or I'd have someone who I've always had this rule, like if you see a post and you have issue with it, push back, but push back firmly but politely. But if you have nothing to offer to the conversation and it doesn't affect you, keep scrolling. And I would sign on to like people being like, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. You don't understand how the Democrats are blah, 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 blah. I'd be like, dude, keep scrolling, shut up. And so I would have these massive panic attacks just logging on to Facebook. And sometimes I'll even today, like the other day, like I got an email of someone that was like, I think I posted it on Facebook, like, what is even this shit? Like someone was trying to yell at me because I don't believe in conspiracy theories anymore. And sometimes I get a little shaky when I see that. But now I'm kind of at the point where I'm building up the tolerance, and I understand that. Like sometimes even now that I have a Facebook account again, I'm like, I won't log on. I'm like, oh God, oh God, what am I getting into? But I'll just ignore it. I'll just move on. And I don't know, but there is that anxiety. There really, and it doesn't help.
Is your mental and emotional health being affected by a loved one trapped in conspiracy theories? If so, discover how Antonio can help you set clear boundaries and reclaim your mental well-being. Book your free 20-minute consultation call by going to www.escapingtherabbithole.com and clicking the button that says Get Started.
What's one idea that you think the majority of people have completely wrong about conspiracy theorists?
Well, we all like to joke. I've made jokes. Sure, you've made the same joke, but I think the biggest myth about conspiracy theorists is that they're uneducated or stupid. And that's not true. And I think, when you see about like some doctor, like a legitimate doctor, either a PhD or an MD.
Wait, we're not talking chiropractors, right? Okay.
No. Well, they're neither an MD or a PhD. I think they have a different acronym.
And let me put this out here. It drives me nuts when people are like, oh, my chiropractor's a doctor. It's like, hey, they might be a doctor or chiropractor. Maybe they do help with adjustments, but when they start selling supplements, that's an issue I have.
Well, when I worked at Aetna, every once in a while you'd be logging into a doctor or a patient's account, and a big red thing would pop up and it would say, do not handle this call. This provider has been flagged for overutilization of services. And it was always either a chiropractor or a physical therapist, where they were like telling the patient they had to keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back. And they really didn't need to. So yeah, I like, even back then I was like, yeah, chiropractors and physical therapists tend to really love to get in those extra unnecessary visits.
Milk in the system. What were you saying right before that? Before my little thing about oh yeah, you're right. Like
they're not stupid. Not all of them. I mean, you do see a lot that really come off as uneducated and ignorant, and That is a fact, but that does not, Alex Jones is not a dumb person.
No,
Mike Flynn is not a dumb person.
they're smart. Do you think that it can make somebody dumb? Do you think it can attribute to like brain rot, which isn't a scientific term, but it's my term?
Well, yeah, because I mean, everyone talks about how smooth those brains become. It damages your ability to think critically. It damages your ability for even just plain situational awareness of just what's in the room and around you. It damages how you perceive the world and how you perceive yourself. I spent like 3 years in the rabbit hole, and during that time I had my own cleaning business full-time out in Pennsylvania, and I managed to do it successfully when we moved to California, and I hated every second of it. And then I realized I didn't hate the cleaning. I hate it myself, because I still do some cleaning now and I love it. I love it because I don't hate myself. It wasn't the job, it was me. And that's what it does to you, is anger, rage, helplessness, hopelessness, powerlessness. All of that stuff is what you feel. And when you feel like that, you could walk into a room made of gold and there's rainbows and birds and it's sunny and it's beautiful, and you still hate it. There's still something wrong. And it does damage your brain, and it also it insulates you from outside knowledge. I knew everything about 9/11. Well, guess what? I didn't start hearing some of the actual stories about 9/11 until like 2 years ago. And like now, literally anyone could come up to me on the street and ask me, like, what time did flight 11 hit? Oh, 8:46 a.m. It was the north side of the North Tower, and it hit just between I think it was the 88th and 93rd floor. And I can explain all these things to people, and I can be like, oh, the borderline was the stairs. If you were on floor 91, you could live. If you were above that, 92 and above, you were dead. There was no way out. And I could tell people about New York City building code. I didn't know any of this back then because I knew everything.
Wow, you did way more research than I did. And please do not tell me to do your own research. Don't tell me that. You did the research for all of us.
Well, I've always been obsessed with 9/11, except now I'm obsessed about it. My obsession comes from a place of reality. Whereas before, it was I still get the same dopamine rush that I got. I still get that same rush from studying 9/11, except it's the same rush, but it's based in reality.
You still
I still get that.
The same validation. Yeah. What did you say? What was the validation? Oh, you said the like it was like seeking importance kind of thing.
Well, no, it's not that. It's more of like, I want to know what happened that day. I want to know every single step. I want to know every second. I want to know. I just want to know so much about that day. And I think because I was in the thick of it when it happened, I didn't get to process it because I was working at a newspaper that day. So everything was go, 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 all hands on deck. I didn't get to really process that stuff. And I think that's what kept pulling me back into it. But I landed in the conspiracies. And honestly, the real facts of it are just so amazing. Like they found 54,000 individual personal items in the rubble and at the landfill. Like that, there's a story behind. There's 54,000 stories. That's so fascinating.
Subscribe to the podcast by going to www.escapingtherabbithole.com Add your first name and best email to the form and smash the button that says Get the Podcast. You'll get instant access when the newest episodes are released. Plus, you'll get the first 3 chapters of Antonio's newest book sent directly to your email.
If you can remember, what's your first thought after you fell out of conspiracy theories?
Well, I one of the first things was they lied to me, because when I watched that YouTube series, and I have to find out the guy who made this series, because I really need to thank him. One of the things they talk about World Trade Center 7, because that's the big one. And I realized watching this video, he's like, this is the side of the building they show you when it collapses. And then he goes, but they won't show you this side. There was, when the conspiracy theorists show you the building collapsing, they'll only show you the undamaged side. And they're like, how could this building fall? They won't show you the backside of the building, which was completely devastated. Half of it was gone. And I had this feeling of, they all lied to me. Those assholes, they lied to me.
What was there any element of shame wrapped up in that? Oh my God, how could I be duped by these assholes?
Yeah, a little bit of it was, there was shame. And especially with Sandy Hook, when my friend looked me in the eye and said that they worked with a parent who lost their child there. That was I had that split second where like 20 years of friendship was hanging in the balance based on how I would react to that. And I didn't even bother with Sandy Hook, because as far as I was concerned, that was absolutely debunked by my friend's story. Yeah. And that's why I went to 9/11. But I still had questions about Sandy Hook, like the whole Robbie Parker saying read off the card thing. And guess what? That was a lie too. All of the YouTube videos.
Were they edited?
Yeah. No, but when he gave the press conference, people claimed that you could hear him say, read off the card. Guess what? It's like those ghost hunting shows where they play a recording and they tell you it sounds like the voice is saying this. When someone suggests, and you should know this because of the hypnosis, when someone suggests that it sounds like someone is saying something,
you fill the blanks in.
And yeah, and the YouTube headlines, all the YouTube headlines would say Sandy Hook father says read off the card. He never said that, because I went back and I watched one of those videos with those headlines. He never said that. He never said that. That was suggested. And so it's important it was important for me to reevaluate.
Yeah, I'm still doing reevaluation. I have a theory that the first conspiracy theory that somebody is introduced to is, I've said this numerous times, is like a foundation of a house. And every time we get new information, a new conspiracy theory, boom, it like settles, and then the house, it settles down. I have a theory that if you were to, because I think that, so let's say, how do I say this? The conspiracy theorists, let's say if they get into 9/11 being an inside job, and then they get into the Jews, and then satanic pedophiles, and then Sound of Freedom, for example. Do you have a feeling that they're not going to talk about the original conspiracy theory? They're going to talk about the most current one. Is that your kind of feel? Am I right on that assumption?
So, sometimes I think, but yeah, it's kind of like you want to hype up the new thing that's in your brain or whatever. Yeah. But it's also, but like for me, like I was always going back to 9/11, always going back to 9/11, and just, I don't know. I've tried to assess what it is about 9/11 that obsesses me so. And I just think it's that the fear of heights, I don't know, but there is something I think about each individual conspiracy theory that clicks with that person.
No,
so
well, my theory is the conspiracy theory that we're first introduced to is like the foundation of a house, and then every conspiracy theory that we get introduced kind of, it's like an extra layer of the house. I would like to see that if you could help somebody to change their belief on the original conspiracy theory, if that would be like a crack through the foundation, would start kind of rippling through. And I think one thing that Alex Jones does is something that you'd have to repeat, is he'll kind of give you little seeds of doubt, and then he says, if they lied about X, what else have they lied about? If those conspiracy theorists lied to you about building 7, what else have they lied to you about? And then you have to let that percolate in the person's mind. When you see the days in the kind of glossy eyes where somebody's processing, you don't just say, oh, look, I told you. You let them process that and just say, you know what? Just sit on that. Just let's talk later. Let them process that.
Yeah, and my one buddy, Poker and Politics, he and I have been doing a series on his Patreon called Found Money, where we're watching and debunking loose change, because we're both former truthers. And it's so fascinating to me. Because seeing it again after not being a conspiracy theorist, I'm blown away at how, like, Lenny Riefenstahl, the style of loose changes, and I'm seeing all their techniques.
What was that name?
Loose. It's called Found Money. That's the name of the series.
You said Lenny what?
Loose Change.
Oh no! You said it. Then you said it was such a style. You said Lenny what? Lenny Riefenstahl.
Lenny Riefenstahl. She was Hitler's personal filmmaker. Okay. She made Triumph of the Will, which anyone who's in a film class, you will have to watch that movie.
Okay. I haven't actually watched Loose Change since then. That was the one that first it was like Alex Jones, and then I got introduced to Loose Change. I remember thinking like, oh, you guys are I'm so ahead of you guys.
It's so well done. It's so well, like the propaganda is like shit. But the music, like Poker and I will be playing the clips and we'll be like, this is a good jam. And the voice, the way Dylan Avery narrates it, it's so crystal and crisp, and it's a very well made propaganda piece. And Lenny Riefenstahl would be very proud of them.
Are you friends with Dylan Avery on Facebook?
Oh no, because I have some choice words for that. You know, son of a bitch.
Is your mental and emotional health being affected by a loved one trapped in conspiracy theories? If so, discover how Antonio can help you set clear boundaries and reclaim your mental well-being. Book your free 20-minute consultation call by going to www.escapingtherabbithole.com and clicking the button that says Get Started.
Let's say you were still a conspiracy theorist and you wanted to recruit somebody to the dark side. How would you go about doing that? What do you think the first, second, maybe third step would be?
Well, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. The FUD model, that's what every great conspiracy theorist does, is you infuse that person with fear. And then you give them uncertainty about the future, and then you give them doubt about how the real world works. And I came up with this thing called FUD for food, where if the person who's selling you on the FUD also is selling you something to counteract that, then if you're selling me the problem and the solution, then there's no legitimacy to that.
Yep.
But you have to sell people on fear, you have to sell them on uncertainty, and you have to sell them on doubt. And once you can infuse that in them, it's not a long drive from George Bush did 9/11 to, oh, where's the Prussian blue staining in the Auschwitz chambers? I was never a Holocaust denier.
I started to get into that stuff. There's a guy, David Coleman, I think.
David Irving. Oh, no, wait. There is a David, the Historical Revision Society located in California.
No, this is guy, David Coleman. And actually, I'm going to look his name up. I actually mentioned in my book, David Coleman, was it? I don't know. This is going to be a shameless plug for my book. I don't want to waste time looking for it. I think it was like chapter 6, but I mentioned how I didn't feel that it's like I didn't feel like I was being anti-Semitic because a Jew told me it. It's what it was. It was a Jewish guy that was basically saying, "Oh no, you can't trust it. The Holocaust was a lie." I think it was.
Yeah, and there was a Holocaust survivor who became a Holocaust denier.
Oh,
And
really?
you think to yourself, how is this possible? But really, if you think about it, it makes the most sense of all. Who most would want to deny something that horrible than someone who survived it? If he denies that it happened, he doesn't have to deal with what he went through.
Have you ever seen the movie Memento?
Yeah,
That kind of reminds me of you just like blocking those memories out.
yeah, yeah, and it's just but I use that was, you know, flat earth, moon landing, and Holocaust. Those were my lines in the sand.
Like,
Those were my lines.
I can't believe you. That this is too crazy.
Yeah, and I grew up like I when the History Channel actually played like history documentaries, I couldn't walk through the living room without hearing Hitler on the TV because my dad is obsessed with World War II. So it was and one time when I was a little kid, because of seeing all these documentaries, I painted a swastika and I showed my dad because it was a perfect swastika, and he was like, no, this is bad, and he explained to me, you know, I didn't know. And so my dad always had it in my head like, Nazis bad, Nazis bad, Holocaust real. And so that was, you know, even when I was reading David Icke and in Children of the Matrix, he gets a little denially. I was like, well, I'm just going to ignore this chapter and believe the rest.
First experience I have seeing a swastika that I remember, I was real little. I was watching Star Trek. It's an episode when they went back somehow. I think they teleported back into Nazi Germany, and I saw a swastika. So I didn't understand. So I think I had like a little. It was like a mason jar lid or like a lid of like a Tupperware container or whatever. So I think it was either using like a marker or tape. No, I think it was using a marker to draw it out, and that's when my mom did the same thing. Like no, like Nazis bad, and explained to me. I'm like, okay. So I think that right there, that might have been the first belief I got installed from my parents, like Nazi bad. No. So that might have been the one thing that kept me from going full out into anti-Semitic bullshit. And then of course I found the stupid the protocols of Zell. I actually had a conspiracy theorist that showed me those in the past like year and a half. It sent me a copy, and I think it had like an FBI stamp on it. I forget what their argument was. I think they were trying to say like the feds were behind it or something. I'm like, no, you ding dong. The feds are probably showing this as a misinformation. Like
I think it was originally written in 1892, and it was written by a Russian, and it was plagiarized from an earlier piece. And honestly, look, I don't, if there's a cabal that's secret and rules the world, do you think they're gonna write it fucking down? No, they are not gonna write it down. Why would they do that?
Yeah,
No.
And if they have that much power, you think Joe Blow listens to Alex Jones is going to stop him? No.
No, exactly. And also, these are people who have never experienced what it's like to have a Jewish friend, what it's like to sit down for a Passover Seder, which I did.
I'm going to have to I'm going to have to interject on that. I grew up in Michigan. I went to school in just outside Detroit, where I went to school in middle school, 99% Jewish. So however fell into that, I don't know. I think in the book I described how I dealt with bullying growing up, being on the spectrum, and well, self-diagnosed. So I think I might have unconsciously said, "Oh, look, the Jews are bad." That might have been the case. I wrote that in the book. I might have attributed some malice to Jews because of that. I mean, honestly, writing a book it's a good therapy session. You unpack a lot of stuff and you start writing a book.
The main thing is that even if you're not an anti-Semite, if you stay in the conspiracy world long enough, you are, and even it's even in loose change. It's heavy in the 9/11 movement. Larry Silverstein took out an insurance policy. Oh, Silverstein, what kind of name could that be? So it's in like the loose changes and the zeitgeist, it's implied. It's implied, and then you get to the people who are doing the 6MWE bullshit.
6
That
MW.
stands for 6 million wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And that, when I first looked that up, I was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And but if you stay in the conspiracy sphere, you're gonna get exposed to it, even if you don't realize it. It's always done in an underhanded, conniving manner.
And let me read the small passage. This is about this is from chapter 5. The chapter is real world consequences of conspiracy theories. Some conspiracy theories seem harmless. We're talking about stuff like aliens, Bigfoot, etc. The fact of the matter is conspiracy theories have a tendency to pull people in, hence the saying going deeper down the rabbit hole. Where it starts getting dangerous is the theories that claim shadow governments rule the world, or even the QAnon theory that satanic pedophiles in Hollywood are feasting on children's blood. While it's easy to mock that belief, it stood the test of time. And in quotes I put, but QAnon isn't that old. What are you talking about? A voice pipes up. Sure, QAnon is relatively new, but the belief that satanic people are feasting on children's blood is thousands of years old. Thousands of years ago, Jews were accused of killing Christian babies and drinking their blood. And then I mentioned how QAnon, I think people that ran QAnon realized, like, hey, we can't say the Jews, it's going to make us look racist. So I said they reframed it from the Jewish problem to the satanic Hollywood pedophile problem, which is smart on their part. You can't call a QAnon supporter, you can't call them racist. And it's funny when that's kind of a nod back to what you said, how there's still like elements of anti-Semitism when they talk about Silverstein, etc. When people are saying like, oh, I'm not saying the Jews did, I'm saying Hollywood elite. I'm like, you're saying the Jews when you say Hollywood elite.
And Mike Rothschild is the reason that he wrote his most recent book, Jewish Space Lasers, which I have an advanced copy of, and it's great. He said that you see this element with, over time. And one of the things that people use to insulate themselves from accusations of anti-Semitism is it's not all Jews. It's just these Jews. And they're always referring to the Rothschilds.
The Zionists, yep. The
Zionists. Yeah, and you can get away with that when you're like, oh, well, I don't hate all Black people, just these ones. And that's where soft racism is becoming hard racism. And even if you don't believe in the protocols of the Elders of Zion, exposure to these ideas and beliefs over time, you don't believe it, but it's in there.
Subscribe to the podcast by going to www.escapingtherabbithole.com. Add your first name and best email to the form and smash the button that says Get the Podcast. You'll get instant access when the newest episodes are released. Plus, you'll get the first 3 chapters of Antonio's newest book sent directly to your email.
I've got one last question for you. What does escaping the rabbit hole mean to you?
It means a better life. And I tell people this all the time. We have a nonprofit organization that's in the process of starting, and it's called the American Information Integrity Alliance. And part of that is DOUBT, which stands for Discussing Our Unusual Beliefs Together. And I'm the head of DOUBT, and it's a support system for former conspiracy theorists. And for me, it's about community. It's about helping people understand themselves better. And I tell people, I can't promise that you're going to have a perfect life, but you're going to have a better one. You're going to see a better one, because underneath that need to believe in conspiracy theories is someone who's gone through a divorce, someone who's been sexually abused, someone who's dealt with drug and alcohol issues. And it's not that those traumatic foundations are like the house foundation that the conspiracy theories get built on. So those conspiracy theories are just a symptom of the problem. So you have to attack what's really going on in your life, Lou, that, you're talking about QAnon all of a sudden. Well, I've been having problems with. That's the thing. It's there's an underlying problem that those conspiracy theories are preventing you. It's a prophylactic from being a better person.
The conspiracy theories, they help people. You know what it is? I think people also have boring lives. We go to work, we come back, our life is boring, things are more exciting on TV. Yeah, I would like to think that I'm fighting some satanic pedophiles, or I'm fighting some big shadow government. It makes it sound way more exciting than our boring ass lives.
Yeah, it does. But the thing is like all that effort that the digital soldiers put into, oh, I went to go see Sound of Freedom, I'm helping. No, let me tell you about NCMEC, okay? Let me tell you about how you can volunteer for search and rescue squads in your local neighborhood. Let me tell you about how to file an FBI tip. Let me tell you about ways that you can actually help children from your computer. And if you want to try and play detective, there's a thing called NamUs. And you can try from your computer, you go through their database and you go through the list of missing persons, and then you go through their list of unidentified human remains and see if you can find a match. And donate to the DNA Doe Project, because everybody deserves their name. So if you really want to be a digital soldier and you want to help save children, you can do it for free for NamUs. You can go online, search Telegram, look for shady shit, file an FBI report. There's so much that you can do to help people. And the most important thing you can do, if you want to help save the children, LGBTQ children, accept them, because they comprise the biggest portion of runaways. Most missing kids are runaways who are recovered within a short period of time. But the reason for that runaway situation is usually because their parents won't accept them. And they also run the biggest risk for being actually trafficked.
Yep.
So there are ways that you can save the children. It doesn't involve going to see a shitty Jim Caviezel movie. It involves being active and helping.
Thank you for jumping on the podcast. And for people that want to learn more about the Doubt model, how do you guys have a website for that?
We have the American Information Integrity Alliance website. It's still like in its early stages. I can give you the link.
Tell you what, everybody that's listening, or if you're on the website or listening, if you go to escapingtherabbithole.com/STEPH for the initials for first name, escapingtherabbithole.com/STEPH, and I'll have it redirect to her website, or she also has a Google document with a bunch of links.
And I'm sending you those links right now. And yeah, so the American Information Integrity Alliance fights against misinformation, and Doubt is there to pick people up who have fallen victim to it.
Thank you.
And there's more of us than you know. For every one of us that speaks out, there's like 10 or 20 more who are silent.
Oh, conspiracy theorists, right? Yeah.
Formers, yeah.
Former. Now, if you're a former, or if you're somebody, I know a lot of former conspiracy theorists have a fear of getting drawn back into it. If you need help and we're not judging. Don't worry, I'll judge other people in my life. I'll judge other people. You can reach out to us. We can jump on Zoom. I can help you to overcome some of the anxieties that kind of caught you there in the first place.
If anyone has questions about 9/11 or Sandy Hook, my email is doubtisthewayout@protonmail. email me. I will answer those questions because I've become, I don't like to use the word expert, but I have become very knowledgeable in both subjects, and I can answer any question that you may have about those two things.
Thank you so much for getting on the podcast, and hopefully the Illuminati laser beams don't take us out. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Escaping the Rabbit Hole. To get instant access to the newest episodes of the podcast and the first 3 chapters of Antonio's newest book, go to www.escapingtherabbithole.com and enter your first name and best email and smash the button that says Get the Podcast.